Hey everybody, Josh Bennett here with College Funding Hero. If you really want to lower the sticker price of your college tuition bill, one of the easiest ways to do that is through getting actual scholarships and grants through the institutions themselves. So by getting grants and scholarships, that's money that you don't have to pay back. Well, in this video, we're going to take a look at the two types of scholarships and grants that you can get from institutions, and that's ultimately where the big money comes from. But we're going to look at how you need to think about these different types of scholarships, what to keep an eye out for, and what really are the different types of scholarships in the first place. So we're going to take a look at that in this video right now. When you think of scholarships, some people just think of scholarships purely as athletic scholarships, academic scholarships, things like that. But there's really two different types of scholarships. One is what's called need-based financial aid, or need-based scholarships. Another is called merit-based scholarships or merit-based aid. So there's really two different types of aid, need-based and merit-based. So when you think about scholarships and how to get scholarships, especially from big institutions like the colleges themselves, it's important to know the difference between merit and need. So for one, need-based financial aid is based purely on the financials of the family. So no other factors like the child's qualifications, things like that, aren't considered when giving out financial aid for need. So that is purely, how much money the parents have, what's their income, what's the income of the student, things like that. So those are the factors that really play into need-based aid. And to qualify for that, basically what you have to do is fill out either the FAFSA form or what's called the CSS profile. So those are the two main ways that you can qualify for need-based aid. And it's, essentially have to fill out these forms, and different schools look at one form or the other. So, as a general rule of thumb, public schools will look at the FAFSA form, and that's the free application for federal student aid. So the FAFSA form, most public schools will go off that. A lot of the big private schools will go off of what's called the CSS profile, which is done through College Board. So there's two different ways to apply for need-based aid. And depending on the type of college, they're going to, look at your assets slightly differently. But ultimately, the college determines how much you can afford to be able to pay for college, and they do that through a calculation that they develop based on these forms. And so, I'll link to another video down below that shows, a more in-depth analysis on how schools ultimately calculate financial need. But that's something that's important to know when it comes to getting this money for college, is that for need-based aid is purely going to be based on the family's financial need determined by either FAFSA or the CSS profile. So really there's a lot of different ways to get merit-based aid, and it really depends on the student. So for example, you can get money through private institutions based on things like culture, academics, extracurriculars, you name it. A lot of organizations out there will give different scholarships for different merit type things, for lack of a better term. So for example, duct tape brand, like the actual tape, even has a scholarship available for just making a prom dress out of duct tape. So there's all sorts of things that you can get on the merit-based side. A lot of the big money though comes from institutions, and really it boils down to kind of two main criterias that they look at for giving out academic merit-based aid, and that's your GPA and test scores. So most schools will have scholarships where they say you meet this minimum threshold for GPA and test scores, and that's what automatically qualifies you to be eligible for a certain scholarship. So for example, like let's say you had a 35 GPA and a 1200 on the SATs. That may automatically qualify you for $5,000. Some schools may just give you that money. Other schools may require you to interview for that as well. So those are the main criteria a lot of schools use, but obviously things like athletic scholarships can come into play. But really, the important thing to know with merit-based scholarships, it's on the merit of the student. It has nothing to do with the financials of the family. It's purely the qualifications of the student. So just to review, there's really two types of financial aid, and they're each way has a different kind of thought process and strategy for how to get that money. So there's need-based aid, which is, again, how do you minimize your assets on paper, your income on paper, to basically minimize the expected family contribution, or how much the family can afford to pay for college. Because again, need-based aid is all based on the financial qualifications, or the financial criteria of the family. Merit-based aid is based purely on the qualifications of the student. So again, when you're kind of thinking through scholarships, you want to approach each one differently based on which type of scholarship you're actually going for. Hopefully you found that useful. Make sure you subscribe to our channel because we put out weekly content to give you tips and tricks on how to afford the cost of college. So make sure you subscribe below and hit the little bell to get notified anytime we release new videos. Until next time, cheers.